Hello, I'm Jeremy Vine, and this is Panorama.
Tonight, what some Muslim children are learning here in Britain.
That the Jews, they look like monkeys and pigs.
Jews look like monkeys and pigs.
Yeah.
The Saudi textbooks for children that show how a thief's hands and feet are chopped off. The schools with connections to fundamentalism.
Birthdays, all practices of the disbelievers and immoral people.
This is what I call fundamentalism, reading scripture out of context.
And the worrying gaps in the school inspection system.
I'm clear that we cannot have anti-Semitic material of any kind being used in English schools.
95% of all Muslim children attend non-faith state schools. However, a small but rapidly growing number are now being educated in either private or new state Muslim schools. But how much do we actually know about these schools? Do they help British Muslims integrate into mainstream life? Or do some of them actually encourage segregation? John Ware has been investigating.
This is Al Furqan School in Birmingham, the first Muslim state primary in Britain. Al Furqan also has a private secondary school. In both schools, there's a genuine sense of respect for other faiths and cultures.
We're here to provide young people with education which prepares them for society, tomorrow's society, in which they can contribute positively.
There are around 30,000 schools in Britain. Roughly a third have a link to faith. Just 160 are, like Al Furqan, Muslim faith schools, double the number a decade ago.
Do you detect a greater demand for Muslim faith schools from parents?
Yes, I would say so, definitely. I have seen the demand grow over the years since I've been involved within the education system here.
Research by Bristol University shows that of all faiths, Muslim children are the most segregated in Britain. Al Furqan, though, strives to connect to the mainstream.
Within our own school, we have loads of different people from different backgrounds, and we go to places of worship, other places of worship. And in Birmingham, we have neighbours that are probably Asian, Christians, Jewish, different, so we all connect.
We have an open door policy which will encourage other people to see how we work and hope they can replicate this model.
Pretty well all schools say they promote integration. But not all faith schools are as willing as Al Furqan to open their doors. So we searched the internet for evidence about how schools of all faiths approached integration. Some ultra-Orthodox Jewish schools seemed locked into their own world. A publication on the site of one evangelical Christian school condemned the entire religion of Islam. But it was the anti-Western tone of some Muslim school websites that was particularly striking.
I think it's very difficult for politicians to actually be absolutely frank about this. There's some very good Muslim schools, but there's some Muslim schools that give me great cause for concern. That is often around the ethos of the school, the focus of the school, and a kind of ideology that is concerning.
I've come to Leicester, one of the oldest Asian communities in Britain. This is the magnificent Jama Mosque. Founded in 1977, over the last 3 decades, the mosque has established several institutions. Next door is a private girls' secondary school. From age 11, the niqab is a compulsory part of the uniform. Across the street is another service provided in conjunction with the mosque. It offers religious rulings or fatwas for Muslims wanting to know what is and is not permissible in Islam. Some of the answers are pretty hard line. A female is encouraged to remain within the confines of her home as much as possible. she should not come out of the home without need and necessity. The Fatwa Service has decreed whether Muslim lawyers should help fellow Muslims seeking asylum in Britain from death by stoning. To assist and aid such people will be unacceptable, impermissible, and highly sinful. The Fatwa Service also warns Muslims to avoid what's held to be one of the West's major corrupting influences, music. It says music is a direct ploy of the non-Muslims intended to undermine Islam. It also makes multiple references to non-Muslims, what they call the kuffar.
The term kuffar is a Quranic term for non-believers, but especially for the enemies of Islam, those who are actually persecuting and torturing the early believers.
It's a derogatory term in the context that's used here.
Well, it's used out of context now. And this is what I call fundamentalism, reading scripture out of context.
When the school inspector at Ofsted visited the girls' school, their report made no mention of the offensive language on the online fatwa service, even though both appeared to be part of the same organisation, the mosque. Ofsted said,
"The school teaches girls to appreciate diversity and learn to value others' ideas and traditions."
But did the inspector even know about the fatwa site? There's no clue in the Ofsted inspection report, and Ofsted say they don't comment on individual reports. One former inspector believes it's just these sort of contradictions that need to be investigated.
Once you get into the practice of school inspection, the starting point for investigating something is often two statements or two pieces of evidence that don't quite gel with each other. And two things not quite fitting are the starting point for you, I'd say, earning your pay as an inspector.
So we asked the imam of the mosque about the relationship between the school and the fatwa service. We got a reply to say that the school was independent of the fatwa service, which had no bearing on their principles and ethos. So we asked the school if the fatwa service was recommended reading for the girls. They wouldn't tell us if it was. What they did say was that the school did not, in fact, come under the supervision of the imam of the mosque. And when we checked the mosque website, the link that said they did had disappeared.
Do you think the school inspection system is geared up to spotting separatist ideologies?
Well, no, it's not geared up to do things like that, partly because people haven't been thinking quickly enough, but mostly because it was never set up to do that.
Well, there are different types of Christians.
We found many examples of Muslim school websites having proclaimed their opposition to Western cultures and values.
We need to defend our children from the forces of evil.
Our children are exposed to a culture that is in opposition to almost everything Islam stands for.
The curriculum must be kept within the bounds of Sharia.
Even celebrating birthdays is condemned on websites some schools recommend. Boys and girls playing games together and blowing out candles is described as a major sin.
Birthdays, it should be remembered, are the practices of disbelievers and immoral people.
Some of the sternest warnings came from websites recommended by some Muslim seminaries, the schools training the next generation of British imams. The websites say it's forbidden to watch films or television. They also say that non-Muslims should be forced to walk on the side if they're met on a pathway, and that to preserve Muslim modesty, places like swimming pools are to be avoided.
They are in these schools from the age of, say, 13 or 14 for 6 years. They don't interact with people who are not Muslim, they don't interact with the opposite sex, they don't learn all the ingredients of the Western world. So it's very easy, again, for them to read the medieval texts, you know, which were written at a time when Islam was under attack, and say, well, non-believers are our enemies and we have to fight them.
So, what can happen when a medieval Islamic mindset fuses with modern-day divine ideology?
They're on warmongering, they're on terrorism.
What does terrorism mean?
This is Sheikh Riyad al-Haq. Some conservative-minded Muslims revere him as one of Islam's leading lights, even though he has expressed contempt for non-Muslims.
Officially given the name, the Crusade. Do not guide us to the path of those upon whom your anger and wrath descended, namely the Jews, and nor the path of those who went astray from the path, namely the Christians.
He came out with some anti-Semitic and xenophobic comments, but they're actually not uncommon, unfortunately, in parts of the Muslim community. I myself went through a radical faith when I was younger, and I think the biggest reason for that is being excluded from the rest of society, not having an interaction with the other.
Being on record as anti-Semitic and totally opposed to integration would rule out most people as a role model for school children. But it appears that Riyad al-Haq has been promoted as one.
This is the Tooting Islamic Centre. It's a place that Riyad al-Haq knows well. He's been a frequent visitor, speaking here on 5 occasions in recent years.
Some of those responsible for the Islamic Centre also belong to an education trust that helps run 2 local Muslim state primaries, as well as a private secondary school, which is inside the centre. On one of al-Haq's visits to the centre in 2008, pupils from the Al-Risalah private secondary heard him speak at Friday prayers. The school newsletter praised him as an inspiring speaker, even though some of his speeches have been particularly divisive.
Allah has warned us in the Quran, do not befriend the kuffar. Do not align yourselves with the kuffar. The verses are so many and so numerous, I can't recite every one of them.
The schools say Mr. al-Haq said nothing like this in front of the children, but his xenophobia had only recently been exposed by the Times. So why had Al-Risalah invited a speaker so opposed to integration? They said they hadn't. So we sent them their newsletter, which clearly suggested they had. They then acknowledged,
"We now understand Mr. al-Haq attended the Tooting Islamic Centre in autumn 2008.
However, the school continued to insist this meant the children had not heard him speak in the school, but in the Islamic Centre. But how separate is the school from the Islamic Centre? Well, they both share the same building.
And some trustees of the Islamic Centre are also trustees of the school.
It is a free country. We believe in free speech. I mean, you can't really do anything to stop schools inviting people like Riyad al-Haq if they want to, can you?
You're absolutely right. But it seems to me that anyone who's running a school has a responsibility and a duty to ensure that they don't allow that school to be linked with those who have extremist or anti-integrationist views.
Al-Risalah schools say they are fully committed to community cohesion. The dangers of not being fully committed are profound. This was Oldham in the summer of 2001. Several northern towns were torn apart by riots as groups of young white and Asian communities fought each other and the police. The official inquiry confirmed the cause as segregation.